Good afternoon. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Victoria Janian. I am the Basic Needs Center coordinator, and today we are going to be doing our Smart Shopping workshop, which is part of our Healthy Eating series. We are recording today's presentation so we can post it online for anyone who was not able to make it today. Throughout today's presentation, if you have any questions, please feel free to utilize the chat, or you can unmute yourselves anytime during the workshop. So to get us started, we'll be focusing on three things today. First is learning about different grocery budgets for college students. We'll be identifying some tools and methods to help find sales and discounts as you do your grocery shopping, and also just to prepare in advance. And then we'll also be talking about different shopping strategies to help improve savings as you do your grocery shopping. So if you would like, if you want to add into the chat, what are maybe some of your current shopping habits like? Are you an impulse buyer? Do you have a prepared list? Have you just kind of gone by the seat of your pants and not really sure what your habits are like? You just sort of show up to the store. If you want to drop that in the chat, we can go from there. So, okay, so somebody said impulse. I definitely can't go to the grocery store hungry because I'll start adding things into my cart that I didn't need. So yeah. If you know what your shopping habits are like, this is something that you can definitely kind of tune into to maybe try and avoid. If you know, for example, like me, if I go hungry, I'm going to add a lot of things into my cart. So, like I said, we're going to start off with a conversation on budgeting for groceries. Do you all have a budget for groceries? Is this something you've thought about before? You can add it to the chat where you can unmute yourselves. All right. So if you have never thought about a grocery budget, now is the time. This will really help you when you think about your shopping habits and how to shop smarter. So what you can see on the screen is essentially 4 different meal plan types that, based on data, is the average monthly food spent by college students. Now, do I think that's always 100% accurate? I think it depends also on where you live, but this is the national average. So for a thrifty meal plan, you'd be spending a little less than $200 a month. For low cost, $239, moderate cost meal plan, $296. And if you have a liberal meal plan, you would have $317 in your budget. So does this kind of give you an idea of maybe like what your budget looks like? How does it compare? And how might having a budget and planning for groceries help you? So to use myself as an example again, so if I go to the store when I'm hungry, or I'm just kind of not really coming up with a plan, I'll just toss things in my cart, right? So what was the point of having a budget? Because, right, I'm not sticking by it. I'm not planning for anything. I'm not keeping by it. So if you very much have thought about a grocery budget, like this is how much you're going to spend weekly or monthly, really planning that out will help effectively maximize your dollar when you go to the grocery store. So if you're like, you know what, my budget is really limited, what are some ways that maybe you can increase it? So what are some things that might be available to you as a student to help increase that budget a little bit more? So first, if you haven't heard of it, CalFresh is a nutrition assistance program that helps individuals and households purchase fresh and healthy groceries. We do have a whole entire workshop series specifically on CalFresh. We do also help students with applications. We do also do pre-screening, and we have drop-in hours on Wednesdays and Thursdays in Titan Hall on the 3rd floor if this is something you'd like to learn a little bit more about, or to get some information to see if you might be eligible for this benefit. For example, a household of 1, if you're eligible for CalFresh, you can receive up to $250 per month for groceries. So if that's kind of what your budget is now, maybe it doubles it, or you can use that $250 that maybe you had already had to something else in your overall budget that you might have had. Additionally, you can utilize different food pantries. So if you don't know, we do have one on campus. It's called the ASI Food Pantry. It's located on the 1st floor of the Titan Student Union, and students can access this resource weekly. So if you're able to get some staple items from the ASI Food Pantry, or maybe if a local food pantry is a little bit more convenient for you, that means the dollar that you're spending at the grocery store will stretch a little bit further. Since the staple items that you needed, you've already gotten, so you can focus your grocery budget at the store on things that you want or weren't able to access from the pantry. So little things like that can help expand your budget a little bit more in case you're maybe not able to increase work hours, or that's just not a possibility for you, or you're not currently employed. Just some creative ways of thinking about how to increase your grocery budget. So if grocery shopping is new to you, or this is something where you're like, you know what, I know there's a better way of doing this. There are different ways that you can start kind of being more mindful of how grocery stores do their sales and how to maximize those opportunities. So there is essentially a savings cycle that happens at most grocery stores. They used to send a lot of weekly ads. I think they've kind of moved away from that. But if you do receive a newspaper that does provide that, you can still access those. But they're also available digitally. So Flip is an app that you can view flyers digitally and create a shopping list. So if that's something that's just a little bit more convenient for you than actually like dealing with paper. And then Keyring is another app that stores multiple loyalty cards. I think in some ways you can think of this as your wallet in your iPhone if you have it, where you can just load this up and then you can easily access that, so you don't have to worry about having physical loyalty cards to like Ralph's or Albertsons, Vons, where have you. Because there are some stores where if you don't have that loyalty card, you may not get those discounted prices that are happening in their sales. Sales cycles usually run from Wednesday to Tuesday. Some stores may actually have monthly sales that are ongoing for a little bit longer than a week. So for example, around certain holiday times, so for example, in March, there's usually some Easter themed items, candy items that might be on sale. There might be other sales depending on like the week or the month. So Thanksgiving is something that's forthcoming. Halloween, so Halloween candy will usually go on sale, not necessarily nutritious items, right? But just to give you an example of when sales might be coming after those holiday events. Most grocery stores also are having apps. So the major ones do have apps where they might show you their sales. You can look at what's forthcoming and just kind of track what those sales are and identify price trends. So, hey, every year I've noticed, or every month I've noticed, you know, these particular items seem to go on sale around this time, whether that's produce, frozen items, etc. That way you can kind of maybe plan your grocery shopping around those sales, so you know you're getting the best possible price for those items. Something to also consider is brand strategy. So as many of you know, there's a lot of name brands. We said a lot of advertisements for them, but a lot of stores carry generic items. So the store brand, so like, for example, Ralph's is owned by Kroger. There's a lot of Kroger items. That's the generic brand for certain items that they may offer. There is a cost difference associated with that. So many times the generic brand is using the same ingredients, methods. It's a very comparable product to the name brand. So I'm thinking of like Kraft mac and cheese. There are going to be generic versions that are very similar ingredients and how the box of mac and cheese is available comparatively to the name brand. Because it's a generic, there's lower advertising costs. It's subsidized by the store. So that's why it's a little bit more affordable. There is also more, when there's more competition for a name brand product, the generic is usually a little bit more affordable. So for example, if a name brand product has one competitor, then the generic is going to usually be about 39% cheaper. So to use my example of mac and cheese. So if there are many brands of mac and cheese, but you have something like Kraft, and then there's like Velveeta, and then maybe Annie's. So that would fall under two or more competitors, or usually 50%, 54% cheaper. So that generic name brand is going to be significantly more affordable. So overall, just sort of going with the non-name brand will be more affordable for you. But something to consider, we all have preferences. So if you like a particular brand, you prefer buying those products, just make sure you're kind of accounting for those price differences when you're doing your overall grocery budget. But if you're not really tied to anything, looking at the generic or the name or the store brand items in the store may help kind of reduce some of those budget or those costs for your grocery budget. Okay, so thinking about your budget, you kind of know how much you're able to spend, whether that's per week or per month. So now let's talk about how to plan and prep for your trips to the grocery store. If you haven't, I'd highly encourage you to consider meal planning. What that does is that really helps you hone in on what you need from the store. So you're not, again, use myself as an example, not going up and just kind of tossing things into your cart left and right. You've got a very specific list of items that you need that will get you through, whether that's the week or every 2 weeks or whatever your grocery trip habits are. So if you've never done meal planning before, or you think it's overwhelming, here's a couple of tips to help simplify it for you. So first, start with a general idea. So do you have any particular dishes or cuisines you might want to eat for the week? So for example, if you're really thinking like, I'd like to have spaghetti one week, and then during that same week, I'd like to have maybe a stir fry, what kind of items or dishes are you looking for? How often do you also want to cook? Is like a goal for you to maybe cook twice a week. So maybe cook on Sunday and then try again on Wednesday because you don't have any classes on Wednesday. Is that more reasonable for you? Do you plan on having leftovers? So when you do your meal for the evening, whether that's like dinner or lunch or wherever you're making these meals, can you double that recipe or make it larger so that you have leftovers? So you have enough to maybe take for lunch or maybe even another meal. That way you don't have to feel the pressure of cooking every single day or more frequently, depending on your work schedule or your class schedule. And there are some weeks where it's like, I don't know what to make. I don't know what to get. What go-to recipes do you have? So for example, I have one that's essentially just a burrito bowl and it's very easy. I know what ingredients I need. I often have them in my pantry, but I can also substitute things out very easily based on what I have in my fridge or maybe what's on sale, just to make it a little bit more customizable. And so it's got a lot of flexibility. And it's a recipe that I know that I like. I'm going to enjoy this meal regardless. Once you actually start figuring out what you want to do for the week, let's start actually planning them. So it's always helpful to kind of do an inventory of what you have in your pantry and your fridge. So do you have any items that maybe you need to use? Like, okay, got some broccoli that might not be lasting much longer, so I want to definitely use that this week. I have all these other ingredients, different spices or different things. I feel like I could kind of throw something together, but I don't know how these things go together. So there are a couple of apps and websites. There's My Fridge Food and Superfood where you can actually plug in ingredients that you have and they'll proffer up some recipes that might be helpful. So if you're like, I don't know what these ingredients go together with, but I need to use them, this is a great way of trying to eliminate that food waste. But also you don't have to purchase extra groceries, right? Because you're reusing items that you currently have. Create your menu for the week, whether that's, I'm going to cook on Sunday and then on Wednesday, and these are the things that I'm going to cook. I'm going to cook them in large batches so I have enough food to get me through the rest of the week or whatever that schedule may look like for you. And so as you're creating your menu, what ingredients do you need to buy? So after you've done your food inventory, are you missing anything? Do you have something? Is there maybe something you could maybe sub out as you're going through? Well, when you meal plan, if you can try and identify multiple recipes that use comparable ingredients or the same ingredients, that means you have to purchase less, right? So if you are looking at your meal plan for the week and you're like, you know what, on Sunday, I'm going to do a pasta dish, but I'm going to do it with chicken. And then on Wednesday, when I do my stir fry, I'm also going to use chicken. So how can I get a larger a purchase of chicken so I can kind of keep that going for a little bit longer? And then maybe it's for you, I'm just going to use whatever is affordable or on sale, and then whatever ingredients I have in my fridge just to reduce those costs. So establishing that menu will kind of help eliminate over purchasing. Maybe you didn't realize you already had some ingredients in your fridge or your pantry. So making sure you know what you have in advance and then what you need to purchase will just help eliminate doubling up or buying unnecessary items. Okay, so yes, there is a question. My Fridge Food and Super App, these should be free apps. You can also check on things like Pinterest, just to kind of find what other resources might be helpful for you. These are just two examples that might be good fits for you. But yes, there are plenty of free websites and apps out there to help find recipe finders, essentially. So, all right, we've made our shopping list, we made our menu. What next? Like, what can we do to really kind of do this in a smart way? So when you're looking at your shopping list, are there ingredients that you use frequently, like spices, vegetables, proteins that you can purchase in bulk? Knowing that maybe you can store it, you can freeze them, so you just have them stretch out a little bit longer. I mentioned this earlier, but check out different ads for local markets. What's on sale? Maybe something that's seasonal, they'll be a little bit more affordable. And something else to consider is the price per unit. So sometimes something may look more affordable, but when you actually look at the price per unit, so, dollars per ounce, etc., something that might seem more expensive is actually more affordable in the long run. This is often the case with store brand items. You might actually get more for less comparatively to the name brand. So math is sometimes a little hard for me when I'm at the grocery store, but you can whip out your calculator on your phone and kind of quickly see, okay, this item is costing this much, but I'm getting maybe 32 ounces versus this one is a little bit more expensive, but I'm actually going to get 48 ounces, which is actually a little bit more affordable. Identify how you want to purchase your groceries. So do you want to buy them in bulk? Do you want to get them frozen? Is this a fresh produce item you need? Can you purchase this canned or pre-prepared? So things like proteins, vegetables can be bought in bulk and frozen. Something to think about if you're like me and fresh produce sometimes makes its way to the trash can instead of into a dish. Consider buying frozen. They will last longer and they often have comparable nutritional values to fresh items because they're flash frozen at the peak ripeness, if that makes sense. So if you're like, oh my gosh, I have a very busy week and something happens and you can't do the meal you had planned, if it's frozen, you don't have to worry about that going bad quite as quickly. Something you can also consider is prepared foods are not going to last as long and they may actually cost more than individual ingredients. In this instance, you are paying for convenience, so that's something to take into consideration. If you don't have a lot of time, maybe buying something that's pre-chopped, or if you're thinking about lunches, like a prepared chicken salad, for example, in the deli section, that's going to cost more than if you made it yourself. But if you don't have time, this might be something you can consider as helpful for you when you think about your meal planning. And then when you're planning to go to the store, categorize your items. So is this something that you have to purchase by store? So if this is something maybe you need very special spices or ingredients, do you have to go to a specialty market? Or is this something that you can get at any grocery store? And something to also consider is where are the items going to be in the store? So fresh foods are usually going to be on the perimeter. So if you know you only want to buy fresh items or things in the dairy section, etc., you really don't have to go up and down the aisles. For me, that's where they get me, right? So I'm walking down, oh, this looks tasty. Let me toss this in my cart. So when I know I only need certain produce items and then I need maybe sour cream or yogurt, I have a very direct path of where I'm going in the store to really avoid temptation or tossing things into my cart that are unneeded. Okay, so we talked very briefly on this, but when you go to the store, how do you start maximizing your budget, your time? So first is, what stores do you need to go to? So once you have your list, where do you need to go? So you can always start with local stores. They may provide more variety and more affordable produce. In Fullerton, there's two stores that are very close. So there's the Northgate Martin, there's the Outer Banks Supermarket. They may have more produce options than maybe Ralph's, Albertsons, Vaughn's, all of which are also very close to campus. So maybe those are better options to get your fresh produce from, and by chance they might have the other items you need. It's okay if you need to go to multiple stores, but try to limit that. Gas is also increasing with our inflation that's currently happening. But if you need to go to 2 stores to make sure you get everything, do what you need to do, but try to limit the number of stores so you're not spending so much time. See if you can also buy bulk or frozen items at the same place. So how can you maximize that one trip? Can you get the majority of the items you need at like maybe Northgate and then go pick up some specialty items at a second store if you need it? If a store offers it, maybe it's more affordable and cheaper to utilize online shopping. Sometimes there's special deals, but again, maybe it's something where I know I'll only add to my cart what I need. So that way I don't give into temptation, or I don't add in things to my cart that I don't need because I'm browsing. This can save on gas because you don't have to drive to multiple stores. And like I said, it could reduce impulse shopping if that's a concern for you. So something to consider as well, whether or not that's a good fit for you, is doing online shopping. For example, I think there's an Amazon Fresh that's relatively close to campus. So you could order that through your Amazon account and then go pick it up if that's a good option for you. So I've kind of alluded to this, but first things first, when you go to the store, don't go when you're hungry. For me, like I said, when I'm walking around and I haven't eaten, oh, this looks tasty, this sounds good, let me just add all these things. So when you go when you're not hungry, you're less likely to do a lot of impulse shopping or add things that are not necessary to your cart. So when you're at the store, how to effectively use your time there and to kind of make sure that you're staying on track to keep in line with your budget, the menu, or the items that you've selected. So like I mentioned, fresh foods are usually on the perimeter. So that's going to be your fresh produce, dairy, things that aren't essentially prepackaged. While you're doing that, it's helpful to kind of look for sales on produce or other items that may not be in the sales, but may be available. For example, so sometimes there's some produce that's kind of essentially not The imperfect ones are the ones that just don't look very nice. They might be more discounted. Or if you know you're going to cook something the following day and they have some produce or products that are like the expiration date is at the end of the week and you know you're going to use it, sometimes they'll heavily discount that because it's got a shorter shelf life. So these things are really definitely worth looking into if you know you're going to use them before those expiration dates. Use a smaller basket if you don't plan on buying a lot. When I go to Trader Joe's, I always make the mistake of getting a cart, and that's when I start tossing things in there. But when you have a basket, you have to carry that. So if it's heavy, right, you're not going to want to add a lot of things to it. So using a smaller basket will kind of hopefully keep you on track and not add a lot of things if you don't want to carry that extra weight. Keep your shopping list available and try to kind of stick to it. So whether that's on your phone or if you like pen and paper, have that readily available so you know exactly what you're looking for in the store. But when you're there, try to be open-minded and flexible. So if you had put broccoli on your list, but the zucchini actually looks much better and it's on sale and you didn't see that in the flyer and you can swap it on your recipe, certainly do that, right? Be open to the possibility of changing things up if it makes sense for the groceries that you've identified you needed and they're more affordable. Try to avoid the temptation of the checkout area. So they always add nice candies, drinks, things like that. So I know sometimes when the line's moving kind of slow, you start looking around, try to avoid that. And then always make sure you're checking your receipt before you leave the store. This is just to make sure you weren't overcharged for anything, make sure all your sale items were added and the discounts were applied, and that they didn't miss anything that should have been a different price. So just making sure that you are appropriately charged for your groceries that trip. All right, so these are just some different strategies. Hopefully some of these were new to you or that you hadn't considered before. Based on that, is there anything that you think you might adopt next time you go to the store? You can add it to the chat or you're welcome to unmute yourself if you would find that helpful. All right. Well, thank you for joining us today. Hopefully you learned some new tips and tricks for shopping a little bit smarter when you go to the grocery store. If you have any questions, there's our contact information. We are happy to answer any questions that you might have. And then if you're willing, if you would be willing to complete our anonymous survey, this is just to better understand if this workshop was helpful, if there's any topics that you would find helpful to have in the future, or anything we can fine tune, that's always most helpful for us. So thank you for joining, and I hope you have a good rest of the day.